We're live right now. Welcome everybody to another one of our Boulders sessions. I'm glad to have you all join us. I know it's been a little while. We've had a couple of weeks here. We took off. There was a lot more important work that we all had to do in the world, obviously. But today we're super excited to introduce our guest. So I'll just give a quick introduction. Our guest today, Kai Lightner, at 6 years old, he first started climbing in Fayetteville. Is that right, Kai?
Yeah, Fayetteville.
Nice, in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Attended his first sport climbing national championship in 2007. It's a pretty quick turnaround after a year. 2010, you won your first championship. 2014, earned gold medal in his age category in the Youth World Championships. Since then, he's won 12 national championship titles, 10 in youth, 2 in adult. Five-time Youth World Championship medalist overall, crusher. Excellent climber. Now he's kind of expanding to the world of outdoor climbing as well, and recently has kind of embraced the role of advocate as well in the world of climbing, whether by choice or not, maybe. And that's something that I'm excited to talk to you about. But Kai Lightner, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And to introduce myself too, I'm Max, part of the management team at Boulders. And we also have Vera with us as well, who also is part of the Boulders crew. Vera, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for being here, Kai. Good to see you, Max.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Yeah, you guys actually have some history as well, Kai and Vera.
Yeah. Let's see if I can remember and retell it, Kai. When I think you were still in high school, maybe you were a senior, and my students were studying a unit called Legacies, and we wanted to talk about living legacies. And so we studied Kai like in depth, his biography, watched his videos, watched some interviews, and then he graced us with his presence live, through Skype. And my students are now, those students, Kai, are now sophomores, they're rising juniors, and they still talk about that. I think Kai's frozen.
Oh, it looks like he might have froze a little bit. That's pretty incredible, though. I love that it resonated that well with your students.
Yeah, it really did.
Oh, we got you back here. Yeah, sorry about that, Kai. I think you froze a little bit there for a sec.
Hello?
We got you. Yep. Can you hear us? Coming
Hello?
in and out here. We got you. Yep.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear us now, Kai?
Let me try to leave.
Oh no. We'll get him back here. We're all
yeah.
We're all still learning the online processes right now.
Yeah. Yeah, Kai has been, in terms of just like the unit that we studied about him, we asked like an essential question that we asked that he actually did a great job answering for my students was, can you be a legacy? And he answered that with my students in a really cool way.
I think I'm back.
Yeah, we got you back. Good to have you here again.
Yeah.
That's cool. So do you remember like what your answer was to that question, Kai? So Vera was just telling me about when you spoke to her students and kind of discussed the idea of like, can you be a living legacy?
Yeah.
Did you guys come?
It's been a while since you asked me that question. And I don't know. I feel like in my climbing career, I've always been so fortunate to, be able to kind of like defy the odds of my community. I know when I was growing up, everyone thought that climbing was a ridiculous sport for me to get into, especially as a minority. And so to be able to kind of triumph over that, I feel like it was kind of like my responsibility to like open the door for other people like me through representation, through programs with my sponsors. I think it's super important for people to know that like there's people who do look like you who can excel in the sport, So if anything, I would hope that would be my legacy. Like when I am long done.
That's incredible. I think that's such a powerful spot to be in for you. With a sport that obviously is kind of woefully lacking in showing the general diversity that exists in this country. Did you realize pretty quickly into your climbing career that you would kind of be like that representative for a community that's underrepresented in climbing? Like, was it something that you saw early on?
Um, I mean, when I walked into a climbing gym for the first time and I realized that I was the only minority face in the room, like it was pretty obvious to me that that I would kind of be that representative voice. I mean, as a kid, I didn't know I'd be as good as I was, obviously, but like I recognized, like, oh, okay, like I'm the only minority in the sport, or in the room, in a lot of rooms, and one of few in the sport, you know.
Hmm.
So I mean, as I uh, got a bigger following and started accomplishing more in my sport, I eventually realized like, yeah, like I would be that voice whether I wanted to be or not, you know? So I might as well use the platform for something good.
Yeah, that's great. Great, like kind of stepping up to the plate there and being such a good role model for a lot of a lot of folks that hopefully discover the world of climbing. Have you seen like personally, have you seen like the demographics change, you think, at all in the last 14 years? Like, do you feel like there's trends of it becoming a more inclusive sport?
I think that I mean I see more people of color a little bit in the sport. I definitely think there's a pretty like large disparity though, especially when you compare it to the average of minorities and like the population of the US in general. When you have 30% of the US being in a minority group, but then only 5% of minorities in climbing,
Hmm.
it's like it's obviously there's a big gap, you know? And I would hope that having people like me in the sport would encourage more people to get into it, but I definitely think there's a lot of work to be done for sure in outdoor
Hmm.
recreation in general, not even just in climbing.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think instead of just letting the attrition of changing demographics in the world and continuing a trickle of improvement in outdoor recreation and climbing, there has to be a lot more intentional work. And that's, I think that's work that recently a lot of us, like, we knew, a lot of us knew it was kind of our responsibility in the outdoor industry to make these changes, but we're absolutely not intentional or deliberate enough or fast acting enough. And I'm glad that I think that these things hopefully will start to change here. Um, Speaking of, so this kind of role of advocate and like using your voice and your experience, would you be willing to share the story that you wrote for Rock and Ice, or the kind of the writing that you created for Rock and Ice recently, that opened your eyes to the reality of Black lives?
Sure, like just describe it. You just want me to start reading
Um,
it.
it, I mean, if you want to read it, we would love that. I think it would be really really powerful to hear it from you.
I mean, yeah, I feel like what kind of inspired me to even write the piece was, I mean, these are the kind of experiences that I'm kind of used to as an African American. It's funny because when a lot of these things were happening on the news and the death of George Floyd, and a lot of people were coming to me asking me questions like, wow, like I can't believe this is your reality, or how are you feeling, or how is your mental health? And I feel like for a lot of people in my position, we're so used to and conditioned for these things to be happening that I don't feel like these specific instances have negatively impacted our mental health any more than any other police killing or like any other product of systemic racism
Mhm.
has in like the past, not in our lifetime in general. I think what's the difference is how people have been reacting. You know, you have 40 million people who are unemployed in this country, and everyone is stuck in the house quarantining and social distancing and relying on social media for information. And so everyone is seeing the same news clips over and over again, and it's kind of caused this like collective uproar. And so seeing so many people like have this revelation and, you know, reading up and, you know, kind of being that ally for a lot of people has been kind of exhausting for the last
Mhm.
few weeks. I mean, it's a blessing because I'm happy that people are, you know, getting more involved and getting more educated and you know, are understanding uh, what a lot of us go through on a daily basis. But it is pretty exhausting, you know, having to explain these topics to people, topics that it seems like, you know, uh, are just second nature, you know, like these are things I had to learn when I was 6, 7 years old, you know.
Mhm.
And and as adults, people are floored that this is like a different reality. So yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely was like,
that is like a one of one of the most glaring things I think when things like this happen, from like from the white point of view and centered from a white point of view, is this the point of privilege of like never having to speak for your race, obviously, never having people come to me looking for answers, especially um, you know representing the Black community in climbing that already is like woefully underrepresented in climbing. I can imagine that so many people come to you looking for answers and questioning experience, and it's not your responsibility to create the answers for it. And that must be like an incredibly difficult role to be in situations,
yeah,
at
and
times
yeah,
like this.
I've recognized from a young age that like what my actions, my achievements, a lot of them would be representative of my entire race because like I was the only exposure that a lot of my friends had to Black people in general. It's like they don't hang around Black people, they don't go to school with Black people, and so seeing me where I am at the sport is like it's like a new like like a whole new world, you know? It's like this is how Black people are like, and it's like it can be a lot of pressure, but
Mhm.
it is what it is, and I love my sport, so I was kind of willing to take on that responsibility. Um, yeah,
That's excellent that I'm glad that climbing um, has you as kind of a figurehead. That's excellent.
thank
Um,
you. Okay,
would you want to read a couple passages at all from?
for sure, I can read it from the
Yeah,
beginning.
that'd be awesome. Yeah, I would love
I spent
that.
a lot of time on it, so
It's incredible. I think it's really resonated. I mean, I've done like a lot of I've read about it a lot, and people on like forums, people discussing it, and I think it's really resonating with a lot of people. So I'm glad that you had the willingness to share this for the world.
thank you. Um, okay, I guess I'm reading it. Um, when accosted by strangers, do not fight back. Try to escape. Don't go out in public with a hoodie over your head. Accept that the world isn't fair. You might have to work 150% harder to be recognized for being equally good. Always comply with an officer's request and apologize for possible misunderstandings, even if the person is violating your rights. If your non Black friends express racially insensitive viewpoints, attempt to explain, but try not to get upset because they don't understand. Avoid looking suspicious when you are out running. In light of George Floyd, I now must add, inspect the bills in your wallet in search of counterfeits. The list of things I need to remember during normal activities each day keeps increasing at a mentally exhausting rate. My mother gave me this list as I grew up, but as an adult, I keep adding to it. The deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd have opened the eyes of many to the realities of life for African Americans in our country. This horrifying discovery has left people asking what they can do to help fix the problem. Growing up in the climbing community, which is majority Caucasian, I've always had a lot of white friends. On numerous occasions, race topics have come up while my climbing friends and I have discussed high profile cases in the news. Though I tried repeatedly to explain the African American perspective, they were unable to empathize with my viewpoint, although they tried. However, recent events have helped them gain new insight, and I am extremely overwhelmed and appreciative of the outpour of support and willingness from others to learn how to combat different forms of racism and support Black lives. Secretly, however, I have conflicting emotions. On one hand, I have to resist the urge to release my pent up frustration and yell, I've tried to explain this for years. On the other hand, I understand it is important to focus on improving life moving forward, embracing new allies, and offering suggestions on ways that everyone can contribute to the quest for racial equality in the United States. The first step is understanding some common hurtful misunderstandings or statements people make that display a lack of empathy for a race of people already carrying a profound burden. Simply complying with officers. Videos of Black people dying during police interactions often depict victims as defiant to officers' commands before the exchange turns tragic. This leads many to say, why didn't you simply comply? However, video footage is never able to capture our full story and how our history with officers has conditioned us to be fearful in these situations. A common example. While driving the speed limit, you are pulled over by an officer and immediately asked a question unrelated to why you were illegally detained, i.e., whose car are you driving? After answering the question, you ask why you were pulled over. Your question goes unanswered, yet you are asked to get out of the car and either sit or lie face down on the ground, a hard, cold or hot, dirty, and sometimes rain or snow-covered surface. Despite being confused, you comply while repeatedly asking why you were pulled over. Without answering, the officer leaves you on the ground and returns to the police car. 15 to 20 minutes later, at a minimum, the officer returns, still does not answer your question, but tells you that you are free to go. Despite being confused and upset, you must remain calm and level-headed to avoid escalating the situation. When the officer leaves, you still don't understand why you were pulled over. Now imagine scenarios like the one above occurring a few times a year to you and your friends. Victim reactions extend far beyond these scenes. They represent a culmination of demeaning racial encounters they've experienced throughout their lives. All lives matter. After repeatedly mourning high-profile senseless deaths of Black victims where no one was held criminally liable, 3 successful Black women, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrice Cullors, founded the Black Lives Matter movement to campaign against violence and systemic racism against Black people. All Lives Matter emerged in reaction and attempted to rebrand the Black Lives Matter message to be more inclusive. This statement should not invoke frustration. In a perfect world, all lives should matter. However, evidence supports a level of discrimination against African Americans that effectively devalues our quality of life. Discriminatory practices are glaring in the criminal justice system, especially when officers are the offenders. Over-policing in communities of color has been common practice for decades, which contributes to nearly 27% of arrests being of African Americans. That is double the approximate 13% of the population we represent. Once charged, African Americans are 7 times more likely to be wrongly convicted of murder than Caucasians, and constitute approximately 47% of all exonerated cases in the National Registry of Exonerations. Statistics on mapping police violence show that African Americans are 3 times more likely than Caucasians to be killed by officers, and officers are rarely held accountable. In 99% of killings by police from 2013 to 2019, no one was charged with a crime. These indicators led many to question whether society values Black lives. The Black community has been desperate to bring these issues to the forefront and seek solutions, which is the root purpose of the Black Lives Matter movement. Responding to Black Lives Matter posts with an All Lives Matter tag diverts the conversation from discussing and seeking solutions for issues that are ravaging our communities. Refusing to acknowledge and discuss systematic issues have led to current conditions throughout this country. During discussions, many people become more focused on defending their viewpoints and realities than listening and learning from each other's perspectives, resulting in deepening racial divides and nothing being done to solve the problem. It is very important to understand how statements such as "all lives matter" or the wildly inappropriate and irrelevant "African Americans should focus more on preventing Black-on-Black crime" can contribute to racial tensions in this country, and what you can do to be a part of the solution. An important step is understanding the power of our words before we use them in our next Instagram posts. Words are multidimensional. They have history and deeper context that can shape people's perception of who you are and what you stand for. If you want to be a part of the solution, refrain from using inflammatory rhetoric. When responding to experiences you don't understand, be willing to ask questions and research these topics to learn more. Also, when listening to other perspectives, be open to understanding that your perception and my reality will be drastically different. Not understanding doesn't make you racist. It highlights a larger societal problem that people need to learn about so that it can be addressed. I've always been able to use climbing as a way to escape the daily stresses of trying to balance school, training, and finding time to deal with unexpected things like changing a flat tire. I learned how on the side of the road while watching a YouTube video. However, for minorities, the topic of systemic racism is inescapable, especially in a sport where participation by people of color is significantly lower than our portion of the population. Many companies are releasing DEI statements to show support for the African American community and acknowledging that more needs to be done to diversify outdoor recreation. These statements provide comfort and hope that we are moving in the right direction. However, actions need to follow, and we as individuals have a lot of work to do. Once you know better, it is your responsibility to do better. Whether it's abuse on the internet or injustices in the streets, utilize your privilege to speak up. It's not enough to disagree silently. This behavior is what keeps systematically oppressive institutions alive. It's also important to use your privilege and platforms to elevate minority voices that often go unheard. Raising our collective voices is the only way for us to influence change. Together, we can advocate by signing petitions, lobbying for progressive bills, voting for politicians who support diversity, inclusion, and equity initiatives, and marching together so people see us and hear us. A unified front is the only way we can fight for a future where all lives truly matter.
Whew. Thank you for reading that, Kai. That's such a well conceived piece. Whew, gives me tingles. Um,
Thank you.
I had a question, like as you were, I mean, I know these things, like, you know, it's unfair to be like, oh, did these things just come up? Of course, these have been things that you've experienced your entire life, and this is just it's part of your experience. Um, does this feel like a piece that has been like a long time in the making, kind of, or did you feel like with recent events that it was like I have to put this out there?
I feel like for me, like writing how I feel and like my emotions has kind of just been a part of my athletic performance as well. I feel like as a high level athlete, whether it's the middle of the season or the end of the season, I think it's always important to reflect on how you feel or how you felt in important moments, whether it's in training or competition, so you can know how to be better in the future. So I'm always kind of writing those things down. And so without climbing or training, I feel like a lot of my reflections have come through kind of life because of COVID.
Mhm.
And so with everything going on, I was kind of just like writing down how I feel, and because I had kind of already been doing that already with some of my previous writings I had published, I felt like, well, maybe if I publish this, then I can help someone come to realization. Because I feel like the one of the things that I kind of struggled with everything going on was like, what can I do? Because I recognized through social media there was so much activism going on. There are so many um, people protesting and you know covering movements that I wanted to be a part of something bigger, you know.
Mhm.
And for me, I felt like the power of storytelling was so important because I feel like I kind of carry a unique narrative that a lot of people in my sport can attest to, you know? I mean, I've been the only African American at my level in my sport for a really long time. And because of that, I have a lot of experience with these things. And I know that a lot of my friends don't understand that experience. So I felt like maybe by telling my own story that I could help them understand that no person of color, no black person is really safe from this kind of reality, no matter who you are, what you achieve, or where you live. It's like this is a sort of thing that we all experience in one capacity or another. And so I feel like that's why I wrote it, and I'm glad that people were so receptive to the message.
That was so beautifully put. Yeah, the power of storytelling and amplifying Black and Brown voices right now. You know, in a world that's too often white centered, I think it's important for people just to hear personal stories, and to actually listen. And I think that that resonates with a lot of people. Um, with a lot of people of like of different backgrounds too. Like there's people that need to hear these things, and we're just thankful that we got voices like you out there. You're very good. You're very good with words, Kai.
I try. Words are really important.
Hmm.
So I try to
Yeah,
take my time.
yeah, that's good. I think like intention, and the idea of like words being important. I think people are learning the meaning behind their words more and more too now, and I think it's good that people are kind of checking, checking things that they're saying and seeing who it truly impacts, which is going to be really really useful in the world and outdoor experience in general. Obviously, we had a question from Mark Parrish. He would like to know, did you think there was like, or what is the barrier for people of color getting into climbing, or any personal experience with that?
I think it's multifaceted. I feel like for a lot of people of color, it comes down to, access, money, and also like inclusivity, because a lot of times outdoor recreation can be expensive, whether it's equipment, whether it's like mobilizing a community to get out there. And I mean, not everyone has access to those resources. I mean, a lot of people who I grew up with like never left their communities or their towns and didn't even know there was a whole world about that out there. Also, um, I think when you enter a sport and you're growing up, a lot of times you want to take part in things where there's role models, there's people you can look up to, you have peers that um, you can relate to in your sport. I remember when I was first starting climbing and I started telling my friends about what I did, and the first thing they thought of was like, that's not a sport for us. That's a white people's sport. Because when you look at commercials or magazines or any advertisement, the only thing you see are typically white males or a smiling white family hiking with their dog on the side of the mountain. And so it's like when you see no one that looks like you, it doesn't feel like an inviting place. And so, and also, traditionally, it's just not something that a lot of people of color get into. And so, I felt like going in that if I wanted to pursue the sport, I kind of was forced to break the mold and be ridiculed by my friends. And I didn't start to get recognition for what I did until years later, when people were like, "Oh, like I saw you on the Today Show. Like maybe it isn't so weird." But I feel like a lot of it is just creating an inclusive environment and also being able to create programs where people are able to have that easy access to the outdoors and recognize it as an option. Um, I mean, a lot of times, even when you go to outdoor areas, because a common argument is how I mean, the outdoors is free. However, a lot of the national parks and the famous areas that you stay in are located in really rural and conservative areas. And
Hmm.
so when you're driving through those areas and all you see are Confederate flags and MAGA hats and people who have never seen people of color in their entire life, it does not make you feel very comfortable going in those areas. Like the first time I was ever called colored or a racial slur was in a rural area at a climbing crag. And it was really like eye opening to me because I had never heard anyone say anything like that. Like these were words that I only heard in history books. So
Hmm.
it was really interesting. I completely get why no one else would want to come out there. And so being able to have a more inclusive, trying to create an inclusive environment, whether it's through programs through gyms or programs through businesses, I think it's like super important in that aspect.
That's a really thoughtful response. Like I think representation. I mean, I've seen it firsthand, at our gym and other gyms. Obviously, like looking at media and social media accounts, and then going beyond just gyms, walking into looking at a prana ad or just anything. You always see the same types of faces. Um, we have a friend of the gym, James Mills, wrote the book Beyond the Adventure Gap, and kind of discussed, like, in that book, I thought it was just a really thoughtful kind of chronological breakdown of why some Black folks have this relationship with the outdoors that is not the same experience that white folks have. um, and just kind of like the painful generational trauma that occurred in those outdoor spaces, um, in time, like, clearly just can make other people feel less comfortable in spots that are supposed to be comfortable for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
people need people to look up to. I mean, it's hard
mhm.
entering a space where um, your culture isn't represented. People don't look like you. But it's definitely something that like I really work hard to push in a lot of initiatives that I do.
That's excellent, and again, it's important work that you're doing. You've also, so going beyond, I mean, I keep bringing up all these, like, I'm just very impressed by you, and I keep bringing up all these kind of powerful ways that you're using your voice to advocate for people, or to advocate for people that may not be heard. You came out with a really powerful article too in Outside Magazine, I believe, speaking up about eating disorders and climbing. Um,
Mm.
is that something that you think is is like a serious issue, kind of system wide in climbing, especially in competitive climbing?
Well, I think that eating disorders are a common side effect in any sport that's highly reliant on strict weight ratios. I mean, in climbing, it's a gravity focused sport. You want to be stronger than your body so that you're defying the forces of Earth. And so when you're doing so, it's like either you increase your strength or you lower your weight in order to maximize that ratio. And so a lot of people think that the easiest way is to be lighter. And you see it so often in our sport at the high, especially at the highest level of competition climbing and in outdoor climbing as well, when people want to push those barriers. Um, I mean, for me, I feel like my kind of tribulation started probably when I was younger because I feel like when I started climbing, it was so far removed from being considered an Olympic sport or considered being truly like a real sport at all. Like a lot of people didn't take competition climbing seriously when I first began. And so when doing so, the knowledge of youth bodies wasn't there and still isn't there, but it was in a much more primitive state then even. And so people just assume that in order to be really good, you have to fit a general mold. You have to, and the average World Cup climber is for men is like 5'7", 5'8", and lean. And growing up, I was a much bigger build. I mean, I'm 6'3" now, but I was always much taller than everyone in my age category. I feel like the only time I was when I was like 7 years old in UD, and UD is like 10 and under, so I was as tall as the 10-year-olds when I was like 7 or 8. And so when you're always that much taller, and I always had a stockier build, I was kind of reminded pretty consistently that I didn't look like other competitive athletes, that I needed to be smaller or thinner in order to be taken seriously. And so when you internalize that sort of image for success, it kind of sticks with you for a really long time. And coaches and kind of make fun of me for like my weight or my size, um, again, it was lighthearted, but it's still something that as a child, it's hard to distinguish between. And it's so easy to tie in like your self-worth and your success in a sport when you're a kid,
Mhm.
because all you know is that when you do well, you make all the adults around you happy. And so that's what you want to do. You want to make everyone happy. You want to make yourself happy. And so, I mean, as I got older and my ambitions got higher, I felt like my desire to be smaller, to be more focused on what I ate and how many calories that I burned kind of intensified until it got to a pretty unhealthy point. And so by the time I was hitting puberty and I was getting bigger and a lot of things were out of my control, it felt more like a failure on my end, like that I wasn't caring or doing my part to carry out what makes me successful. 'Cause I always felt like the number on the scale was dependent on how I would do in competition. And so when that number is going up and it's out of my control, it makes me feel like a failure. And so
Mhm.
eventually, when you're restricting your body and you're doing things that are pretty abusive, I mean, your body can only run on E for so long before it reacts on itself, you know? So like I have been brought to the doctor and I had been told that I needed to eat more or I needed to drink more if I wanted to survive because my kidney was near failure or I was getting really deep migraines because I wasn't giving my body enough nutrients. And so eventually it was like, okay, like I need to change something but I felt like I kind of had to crash before I got to that point, you know? And so I feel like I wrote a piece like that because I wanted people, not only just athletes, but coaches and parents and a lot of these climbing clubs to realize that it's really important for people to understand how vital what you say to kids can be, like how much children can internalize what you tell them from a coaching perspective, you know? Because for a lot of times, coaches see you just as much, if not more, than your actual parents, you know, and you're caught up in the gym and in the sport more than you are in your own home. And so and these are your family and these are people you're around, you have to realize that you're kind of raising these children too. And so being able to know to keep them safe and to
Mhm.
be able to have them maximize their potential and be productive adults, like you have to be cognizant of building healthy habits, you know, because
Mhm.
not everybody's body is different. The
Mhm.
way people process what they eat and what how they exercise is different. And a lot of body types can be successful because luckily climbing is a sport where it's much more than just performance metrics and being strong. Like you have to be smart and a good problem solver, and you have to be flexible and mobile and have all these tools in the box. And you can look at a lineup of World Cup climbers and see a variety of body sizes and climbing styles all be equally successful because there's just so much that goes into play in being a top level athlete in the sport. So I think that like celebrating that diversity and body type is super important.
Can
That's, yeah,
I?
that, oh yeah, go on, Vera. Yep.
Oh yeah, Kai, one thing wanted to just say is just sort of like it's really remarkable because you're really dealing with with the like the intersections of not only just, you know, as a black man, a client, you know, black man who happens to be, you know, pretty much, you know, minimally represented in our sport of rock climbing, and then body image, you know, that all of those intersections, you know, and it has to be really wearing. And something that Brad and I were talking about that we remember about you when you were out here for the bouldering competitions in Madison in 2015, 16 or so, was just how calm you were and like your demeanor under pressure. And so I'm just wondering, like, what are the things that you do to keep you, you know, not just in competition, but just, you know, overall, like your mental and emotional and social health and well-being? What are the things that you do that keep you centered in the way that you present yourself, and given all of those other, you know, body image and being a young black man?
Um, well, first I'd like to say, like, I really appreciate that you guys think that I look so calm because I've gotten that ever since I was a kid. People are like, "You look so calm and together," but I am always so nervous sitting in the chair or warming up. I've always been that way, but like, I guess I have a solid poker face. But I feel like in general, for just mental health, I feel like it's a multifaceted question because I feel like a lot of it is a routine, you know? Being able to keep your body and your mind in a consistent routine on a daily basis leading up to competitions during training is super important. So whether that's, you know, school, um, climbing, stretching, running, whatever extracurricular you do, they all kind of fall into that balance of making you feel calm. And so for me, like it's like when you take one thing out of the equation, it like kind of throw things off for me a lot. Like even like when I don't have school and I have all this free time, people will think, oh, it's more time to focus on climbing. But it's like no, like I'm so used to my routine that when you take one thing out and I have a big gap in my schedule, I'm like, well, what do I do now? You know? And so it's just like keeping things consistent. For me, I always listen to music or the same playlist when I run, or when I'm doing anything. Like I have a competition playlist, I have a running playlist, I have a stretching playlist because I feel like, you know, music keeps me calm and it's always been a connective piece in my athletic performance. And so that too. When I go into isolation, I have my cards. Well, I don't have cards anymore because I guess I'm an adult now, so I can remember my routine. But as a kid, I would always have these like laminated index cards that had lists of bullet pointed items for me to do, and I always did my routine that way in isolation. Um, Also, like even when I get out, my routine of in front of the climbing wall, my routine is always to visualize the climb if I've been able to like forerun it, or if not, be able to like visualize me topping the climb before I go out and do it, and so that I'm not nervous. I know that it's doable for me inside. And so yeah, I think the key word is just it's balance and routines, you know? As long as you keep your mind in a routine, your body remembers what it took for you to be successful the last time, you know? And so like it keeps that routine and you end up feeling the same in those competitive moments. Like that feeling of familiarity helps you be successful.
That's awesome. Awesome advice. Yeah, routine is important. Everything in life. That's probably why I'm not a great climber, because I don't have a good routine in my training schedule. Kai, we had
My
a
routine's
question.
definitely not perfect, but yeah.
We had a question from Emily Winship on Instagram. So she said that your project in South Africa seemed really cool. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh yeah, yeah. So last year in South Africa, I had the privilege of going and meeting up with this program called Dream Higher, and it's a program basically made up of African children from different countries in Africa who come from different backgrounds of poverty or violence or genocides, and they kind of use this program to bring them all together and provide them with an outlet to keep them out of trouble and to give them something productive to strive for an outlet, you know, like being able to appreciate the outdoors, you know, because a lot of times when you are in that cycle, it's so easy to go into just be negatively influenced by your
Mhm.
community, whether it's through gangs, crime, etc. And so being able to use that program. Hold on one second. I'm sorry, my phone is dying, and I do not want to.
Oh, thank you.
I,
Yeah, we
I don't want
don't want to
to.
lose you.
I looked up and I was like, "Oh shoot, my phone's at 1%." Okay, wait.
Is that
Hello?
a Yep, we got you here. Is that Dream Hire program like a program that people can support at all? Like anyone watching right now? Oh, one sec here. I think we have a temporary freeze due to charging. Speaking of, guys, I don't think I have mentioned the stream in general, and I'm doing a big disservice by not doing it. We are always trying to raise money for Boys and Girls Club at Dane County, who are doing incredibly important and useful work right now. Beyond Boys and Girls Club, there's a lot of other agencies that if you aren't donating, you really should be donating to. If you're in the Madison area, Freedom Inc., Urban Triage, Free the Bail, Free the 350 Bail Fund. Great things to support right now. If you're not making your voice heard, you should do that as well. And going beyond that, you should also make your wallet speak a little bit and help folks that are doing the work right now. Boys and Girls Club of Dane County, we have a link. We'll wait for Kai to come back here. I hope he makes it back in. His phone may have actually died. That 1% is always pretty close to that 0%. But we'll have a link on our Instagram page that will link to donations for the Boys and Girls Club. And we've announced this earlier, I think, like a week and a half ago, maybe, that One Climb, so we talked to Kevin Jorgensen a couple months ago now, I guess, about his One Climb initiative, which the motto is one climb could change a child's life. And the whole purpose is to bring climbing walls into Boys and Girls Clubs across the country to provide access to kids, provide climbing access to kids that may otherwise not have an opportunity to try out climbing. And we just heard recently that Adidas approved funding for 2 walls in Dane County Boys and Girls Clubs, which is super cool news. Very excited by that. Because again, like what Kai talked about earlier, representation is obviously important, and so is access is another huge thing, which I think this really helps address. I don't know if we're gonna get Kai back here. My fingers are crossed. I hope everyone's doing well. If you guys haven't been to the gyms yet, the gyms are open now. That's pretty exciting. Tomorrow, here, I'll bring in we can chat with Josh here. Brad, you want to bring Josh in? We have some team kids that have been hanging out here. Or Elijah, yeah, you can hop on. We have some team kids that we can chat with here. We can catch up on what's been happening during quarantine.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hi.
How you doing?
It's really cool to actually like meet, like be able to like listen to Kai Lightner talk is really cool. He's been like such a big part of the flying community. It's really cool.
Oh, he just heard you say that.
My phone died. I didn't expect it to. I was too late.
You were so close. Hey Kai, we have a couple young men from our climbing team here. We have Elijah and Josh from our climbing team here that are popping in to say hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Josh, did you have any questions for Kai at all that you wanted to throw out there?
Yeah, I was interested because like you've been climbing and competing for like a really long time. Like, what really like keeps you in like how do you like? Gosh, I don't know how to phrase this question, but going back to competing year after year, like what gives you that motivation and that strength to kind of work your way up and compete at those like high levels?
What I think is so great, honestly, about my sport is the fact that there's always something to strive for. Like competitively, I feel like there's so many goals to achieve, there's so many competitions to enter that even if at some point, if I win every competition that I ever want to do, then I could easily just venture off into a different section of climbing, because there's competition climbing, there's big wall climbing, and etc. So it's like I feel like I love this sport so much, and what motivates me to go back into competing and climbing all the time is that I just know that there's always a higher goal to strive for, And I just love competing. Like I love being able to be put under a lot of pressure and see how my body reacts,
Yeah.
I had a question. I was wondering if you did any other sports other than climbing.
Well, I was pretty clumsy, so I wasn't great at a lot of other sports. However, what I do try to do is I run a lot in the mornings. So it's really hot here in North Carolina, so I have to wake up at like 6 a.m. to run. But I feel like it's a really good way to keep my cardiovascular system up. But a lot of the other sports that I do are in relation to climbing to help me with certain aspects of climbing. So I used to swim to help keep my lungs up, and I run for cardio and such. But as I don't think I take any sport as seriously as I take climbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you guys. Hey, we're Elijah and Josh. We're excited to get you back in the gym soon. Get back on those walls.
Friday.
Yeah,
Tomorrow.
we'll be there tomorrow at 3.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Climbing.
We will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for the questions. Kai, have gyms opened in North Carolina yet?
No. So none of the gyms have opened. I don't think we're done with phase 1 technically yet. And so like it's kind of weird. But I'm going down to Atlanta. I know some of the gyms there are open, but like I'm a little skeptical of climbing gyms right now because I am a person that's at risk because of like my chronic asthma and my lungs being kind of like just prone to infection. And I'm gonna be moving down to my family who's also pretty prone to that. And so I'm a little bit more cautious. So that's why I built a climbing wall in my house, and I built, my mom and my family helped build me a second one down in Atlanta at the other home too. So I'll be climbing, just maybe not in the gym for a little while.
That's a wise, responsible take to have. It's kind of it's wild for all of us, obviously, and very dynamic, but like we're all trying to act within accordance of guidelines, but there's still a lot of unknowns, of course, in the world. We can wrap up here pretty soon, but I had another question. So you've been doing the share the mic hashtag. I think you did a post recently with Alex Honnold with the with that share
Yeah,
the mic hashtag. Can you tell us a
yeah.
little bit about that experience and like your kind of your thoughts about
Well,
that hashtag
um,
movement?
yeah. Well, I actually had never heard of the hashtag. I was just chilling, and like at 9 o'clock at night, Alex messaged me, and he was like, hey, like I really like some of your content, and it'd be great if I could share some of it on my page. If you want to do an Instagram takeover, you could. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And he was like, he really left the door like really wide open and gave me like no restrictions. He was just like, yeah, here's my information. You can log in whenever you want. You can post whatever you want. Like for as long as you want. It can be like a day or two. I don't really care. And I was like, that's really cool. And he was just like, I really just want you to be able to like amplify your messages on a larger platform. And I've always respected Alex a lot for that, because Alex is kind of like a tell it as it is kind of person, as you can probably tell in any of his documentaries. And so yeah, and so because of that, he's just so real, and he's just like, I just like, he just kept it really straightforward with me, and I really liked it. It was a really nice experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great that folks are kind of stepping up and using I guess like using their cloud or sharing their platform, instead of just using their voices, kind of seeing voices that maybe more important than their own, but kind of giving them the podium to run with it essentially.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better way to, share an experience, or share that you care, than like allowing that person to speak for themselves. It's so
Mhm.
easy to show, like to tell people that you're an ally, but to kind of show it, I think is really special. And Alex is definitely that type of guy. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's good to hear. I mean, he obviously seems like he does incredible work for the world, and I'm glad that he's also part of the climbing community. While you were restarting your phone, I was kind of talking to the viewers and listing some good local organizations in Madison, Wisconsin here that they should donate to support racial justice in general. Are there any organizations that you've been really hyped on lately, or in Boston, North Carolina?
Well, I feel like one that I've worked extensively with a lot is Memphis Rocks, and they're kind of like a climbing gym slash community center in Memphis. And what makes them so unique is that they're this massive, beautiful, multi-million dollar gym in the middle of a really poor area of Memphis. That is like, when you drive through, most of the homes look condemned
Mhm.
due to various economic and systemic reasons. And so the fact that they built this gym, and they work on a pay-as-you-can system, so people can come in and just, they want to make sure that it's accessible to everyone and affordable for everyone. And the purpose is just to build the community there, provide a space for people to, you know, express themselves, uh, participate in something productive. I remember first entering the gym, and there was live music playing upstairs, and a burlesque studio, and one of the the windows. Ah,
Cool. Oh, that's so interesting. Uh-oh. I think his phone fell. Is my guess. Yeah, that must have been a falling phone. I do like the timing there to be like, and there's a burlesque studio upstairs, and then the phone dropping. If we, I think we'll be able to get him back here. But that Memphis Rocks, that sounds really interesting. I mean, that's a concept that I think could be more explored in climbing gyms in general, kind of, just opening in a community where you wouldn't expect.
Yeah. Josh, did you have another question?
I don't really think I have anymore. I don't
Okay,
know.
I didn't know if you guys had other questions, or if we get them back, we'll see.
I really think that Memphis Rock sounds really cool though, because like climbing is like something that we should be like sharing with everybody. It's such a cool sport, and it's really good to give it to opportunities to people who are disadvantaged by the position they're in. It's really
Yeah,
it's a really cool way to like express yourself, and like it's such a cool community, and we should really just work on building on that too. I think it's really important.
Yes, that's so good to hear. Good to hear from the young people, Josh. I love that.
yeah,
That is.
it really is.
And if you guys want to check that, if anyone watching, so what is it? www.memphisrocks.org, and it's ROX.org. If you guys want to check out that Memphis Rocks or offer them any support, because Kai seems to be pretty interested in their cause there. We got about 4 minutes here. There, he's back. Yes. Okay. It would have felt so unfair to end it without saying goodbye. Kai, welcome back.
I am so sorry. My phone literally sucks.
Did it die or did it fall? The last time you saw of you, you were like, huh, and then you were kind of blurred and frozen.
It did die, and the reason why it died is because I guess this outlet doesn't work well anymore. But I went to a different outlet. Oh my goodness!
Awesome.
Well, at least we know this will be the last time this will happen, right? We got 3 minutes left. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
perfect.
I don't know where I left off of, but basically, yeah, Memphis Rock works to build community, and they work to give scholarships to the kids that they work with, and they're just like super involved in the community, and it's run by people who were born in the community, and so I think that it's just super, full circle. They give back to their own community, and I love working with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a model that I think could be and should be emulated all across the country. That's really cool.
They like built DEI into their business model. They just can't.
Yeah, that's that concept of like, with the outdoor industry, if you're so ingrained, if these the systemic issues exist in something, it's like the whole concept of like, police abolishment. It's easier to start over after a point, and that's great that they kind of took that model and were like, we're going to start right from the start.
Exactly.
Anybody listening too, if you guys want to donate, there's a donate button. So memphisrocks.org, ROX.org. You could definitely throw them some money to help them keep this cause up. And once again, I'll just do another shout out for Boys and Girls Club in Dane County. You guys should definitely support them. Great cause. Also Freedom Inc. And for anyone in Madison, before we go too, anyone in the Madison area, tomorrow at noon, Olin Park, Juneteenth party. Come on down, celebrate Black culture. Spend your money on Black-owned businesses, and just kind of let your voice be heard.
I'm so jealous. I wish.
Have you been pretty adamantly quarantining right now?
I've been pretty adamantly quarantining. I know that when I go down to see my family in a few months, I'm gonna be like exposing myself to people who can't be, really at risk, much more at risk than I am. And so I'm just like, I can't be irresponsible. I can't be around people, and it kind of sucks.
But I think it's good, and it's a testament to your character as a person that you realize that there's like more important things than going to the gym or whatnot.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to put other people's concerns over your own.
It's true. Well, I think that we are just about out of time here, Kai, but it's been wonderful talking to you. I'm super glad that you were willing to kind of share your voice and share your experience and story with us. I know Josh and Elijah were stoked to hear from you. I know we have a lot of streamers watching that really loved hearing from you, and I really appreciate it too.
Yeah, it was great to see you again, Kai.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Okay, well, I think you said.
I think we got our goodbye, and I'm hoping that Kai heard it. Everybody else watching at home, thank you so much. Be safe out there. Be good to each other. Be kind. Do the work. Be thoughtful. Love y'all.
Yeah, but when is the climbing team going to start up again? Do you have any idea?
Yeah.
Oh no! Way late at the end here. You guys waited. We're eagerly discussing ways to start the climbing team up again for sure. We want to make sure, first of all, that you guys are safe before we do anything. So that's our number one priority. But you'll be the first two to know when we're ready to start things back up again.
I like the idea of doing it Sunday after hours, just comp team.
There's the potential that we could try that for sure. I'll put that in the drawing. Cool guys. I think we're gonna head out here. Vera, nice chatting with you.
All right. See you later.